In a muddy field near Poitiers, a kingdom's fate hung by a thread. An unthinkable defeat. The King of France, a direct descendant of Valois, was captured. An unprecedented humiliation for Europe's most powerful realm. Against overwhelming numbers, a tactical masterstroke unleashed a storm of arrows. A disciplined force against French chivalry. But how? How could 12,000 Anglo-Gascon soldiers decisively humble a French army of 30,000? For 100 years, the fires of war consumed Western Europe. Dynastic ambitions clashed, redrawing nations' very borders. This was the 100 Years' War, a brutal century-long struggle marked by incredible audacity and devastating gambits. At its core, a bitter dynastic dispute. English Plantagenets claimed the French throne, a claim enforced by steel. England's formidable Edward III pushed his claim, his kingdom fueled by ambition and a fierce, emerging national identity. Facing him, the proud French Valois monarchy defended ancestral lands, commanding Europe's largest, most splendid army. Their clashes were epic, defining an era. But none would be more shocking, more improbable than Poitiers. In 1356, the stage was set. England's formidable warrior, Edward the Black Prince, led his forces. A force of just 12,000 men, experienced, disciplined, but vastly outnumbered deep in enemy territory. Their adversary, the colossal French Royal Army, an estimated 30,000 strong, led by King John II himself. A numerical disparity almost unfathomable. A smaller army, trapped, facing the full, terrifying might of a kingdom. The Black Prince's audacious raid had drawn the French king into a deadly pursuit. The trap was sprung. King John II, confident in numbers, sought to crush the English once and for all. No escape. The French believed victory was inevitable, their chivalry unmatched. Their sheer numbers seemed to guarantee triumph. Yet, against all odds, the Anglo-Gascons would achieve a victory that would stun Europe, changing history forever. This wasn't just a battle, it was a fatal gamble with medieval Europe's future hanging precariously in the balance. How could a force so small not only survive, but utterly shatter an army more than twice its size? What cunning tactics, what desperate courage, forged this impossible victory? The story defies belief. Join us as we unravel the legend of Poitiers, the nightly showdown that redrew medieval borders. For 100 years, two great powers clashed. A century of conflict forever reshaped Europe's destiny. The roots of rivalry ran deep, a complex tapestry of feudal loyalties and burgeoning national ambitions. This wasn't merely war, it was a grand strategic game for dominance, with entire kingdoms as stakes. The 14th century dawned with a profound crisis. The direct Capetian line in France had extinguished. A throne lay vacant, sparking a fierce succession dispute that would engulf two powerful nations. England's young king, Edward III, saw an undeniable opportunity. He held a compelling claim. Through his mother, the daughter of the last Capetian king, Edward, was a direct descendant. To Edward, the French crown was not merely a symbol of power, but his rightful inheritance. But the French nobility vehemently rejected an English king ruling their lands. It was unthinkable. They invoked ancient Salic law, prohibiting claims through the female line, blocking Edward completely. Instead, the crown passed to Philip VI, establishing the new Valois dynasty, firmly French. Philip's ascension solidified French independence, yet inflamed Edward's dynastic grievances profoundly. The Valois monarchy moved swiftly to consolidate power, preparing for the inevitable English challenge. Formal challenges and counterclaims escalated, pushing both kingdoms closer to the brink. Edward, despite his claim, begrudgingly paid homage for Gascony, a constant source of friction. Beyond crowns and bloodlines, economic rivalries fueled the fires of conflict. Flanders was crucial. Flanders, a wealthy cloth-producing region, relied entirely on English wool, granting England leverage. French attempts to assert control over Flanders threatened English economic interests and power. Then there was Gascony, a rich English possession in southwestern France, vital and coveted. A remnant of earlier Angevin power, Gascony was a constant feudal dispute, a territorial powder keg. Edward III, a king of immense ambition and military talent, sought to enforce his birthright. His declaration of war was not just for territory, it was a bid for the very soul of France. England's formidable armies began to mobilize, ready to cross the Channel and reclaim what Edward believed was his. The English military machine, honed and innovative, was poised to unleash devastating tactics upon France. The French Valois monarchy stood firm, ready to defend its newly acquired legitimacy and ancient lands. Early skirmishes and brutal raids defined the conflict's opening chapters, testing both kingdoms' resolve. The century of conflict drained treasuries, strained allegiances, and reshaped the very fabric of society. The war escalated into a brutal struggle, marked by devastating chevauchés, scorched earth, and immense suffering. Chivalric ideals often masked the grim reality, a relentless, destructive clash of medieval empires. This century of simmering hatred and open warfare was an unstoppable collision course, leading to Poitiers. The 100 Years' War raged, a brutal conflict demanding decisive action. England needed to strike deep. In 1356, Edward, the Black Prince, formulated a daring plan, a calculated risk to break French resolve. His objective? An audacious chevauchée, a devastating raid deep into France's economic heartland. From Bordeaux, a formidable Anglo-Gascon army gathered, numbering just under 7,000 men. These hardened warriors, driven by loyalty and the promise of plunder, prepared for a perilous journey. Their mission was clear: sow chaos, destroy infrastructure, and provoke the French king into battle. On August 8th, the Black Prince led his forces across the border, venturing into hostile territory. The chevauchée began, a rapid, brutal march designed to outmaneuver any immediate French response. Behind them, a trail of devastation marked their progress. Burning towns, ruined fields, shattered lives. Living off the land, the English army systematically plundered the rich French countryside, weakening its war effort. Despite the brutal nature of the raid, the Black Prince maintained tight control over his veteran forces. They pressed deep into Berry and Auvergne, leaving a path of destruction hundreds of miles long. Edward's audacious gamble was paying off. The French heartland was reeling from the unexpected assault. Panic spread like wildfire. Local lords were powerless to stop the swift, destructive English advance. Economic warfare was paramount. French agricultural wealth, vital for sustaining their armies, was decimated. News of the unparalleled destruction reached King John II. The Black Prince's raid could not be ignored. The French king was incensed. Honor, prestige, and the very fabric of his kingdom were under attack. Caution was abandoned. John made a fateful decision. He would personally lead an army to crush the invaders. Throughout France, the call to arms rang out. Every available man was summoned to defend the kingdom. An overwhelming force began to gather, an army vastly outnumbering the English, eager for vengeance. The Oriflamme, sacred banner of France, was raised. This was to be a decisive engagement. With unprecedented speed, King John II set his massive army in motion, chasing the elusive Black Prince. He aimed to intercept the English before they could reach the relative safety of Gascony. Suddenly, reports came in. A colossal French army led by King John himself was closing in. The hunter had become the hunted. The audacious raid now risked becoming a catastrophic trap. The English began a desperate retreat northwards, seeking a defensible position or an escape route, but the French pursuit was relentless, their sheer numbers steadily closing the distance, sealing the fate. The escape window narrowed. Prince Edward's gamble had provoked the overwhelming French response he desired. Now, he faced not just a pursuit, but an inevitable, decisive confrontation with France's finest knights. Near Poitiers, two massive forces converged, setting the stage for one of history's most epic battles. September 1356. Near Poitiers, a collision course was set. One side, resolute, the other, supremely arrogant. The Anglo-Gascon forces, outnumbered, chose their ground with shrewd precision. Every advantage was seized. Natural barriers transformed the landscape into a fortress. Thick hedges, impassable vineyards, became their shields. Behind these defenses, dismounted men-at-arms stood firm, their discipline an unyielding core of steel, and within the thorny labyrinth, the longbowmen awaited, their arrows the silent arbiters of medieval battle. Every commander understood the terrain's vital role. It was not merely ground, it was their decisive weapon. The ground itself was weaponized. Hedges were reinforced, pathways narrowed, denying easy passage to cavalry. A collective breath held, a unified resolve. They were a smaller force, but their position was formidable. The Black Prince observed. His strategic genius had crafted this defensive masterpiece, awaiting the French onset. This was the unyielding ground, a stark contrast to the vast, open plains favored by French heavy cavalry. Meanwhile, the French host arrayed itself. Their numbers were overwhelming, their confidence absolute, bordering on hubris. King John II, leading the flower of French chivalry, believed victory was assured. His army, a glorious spectacle. These knights, resplendent in their heavy armor, saw a small trapped enemy. An easy, glorious triumph beckoned. The sheer scale of their force filled the horizon, a magnificent display of medieval military might and splendor. Discussions were swift, decisive. The plan, an overwhelming frontal assault, crushing the smaller English force. The ground trembled as French cavalry began to form. Impatience and bravado fueled their desire for glory. Many harbored a disdain for the dismounted English. They believed a proper knight fought from horseback gloriously. The first French vanguard, led by two marshals, began its advance. A torrent of steel and ambition unleashed. With a gesture from their king, the Battle for Poitiers officially commenced. The French juggernaut was now in motion. Across the field, the enemy approached. A sight that would have broken lesser men, but not these determined soldiers. The initial French assault was a thunderous, uncoordinated charge, each knight eager for individual glory. Crossbowmen advanced alongside, loosing their bolts. A preliminary shower of projectiles, largely ineffective. But the terrain was not open. The hedges and vineyards, dismissed as trivial, now became a deadly quagmire. In their defensive positions, the English longbowmen waited. Patiently, calmly, they prepared their devastating response. The French charge, fragmented from the start, began to falter. Horses stumbled, momentum was lost, chaos ensued. Crossbow bolts rattled harmlessly against shields and armor. The French preliminary volley had little tactical effect. The natural barriers ripped into the French formations. Horses and riders tangled, a magnificent charge turned messy. Knights, unhorsed and struggling, became vulnerable. Their heavy armor, designed for glory, now became a deadly burden. The vanguard's charge devolved into a muddled, disorganized mess. No cohesion, no unified force, just individual struggles. Against this chaos, the Anglo-Gascon lines held firm, an unbreakable wall of disciplined men-at-arms and archers. Then came the command, the signal for the English longbowmen to unleash their terrifying concentrated fire. Thousands of arrows darkened the sky. A deadly rain, aimed with chilling precision at the stalled French cavalry. Arrows found their marks, piercing armor, felling horses. The disciplined longbowmen proved their lethal supremacy. Horses screamed in agony, collapsing beneath their riders. The ground became a graveyard of noble aspirations. Unseated knights, entangled and exposed, became easy targets. Their arrogance had led them straight into a deadly trap. Any French who struggled through the arrow storm met the disciplined Anglo-Gascon infantry. A wall of steel awaited. The shield wall held, unyielding. Fragmented French attacks dissolved against its disciplined, formidable strength. Relentlessly, the longbowmen continued their deadly work. Each arrow a testament to years of rigorous training. The French crossbowmen, unsupported and vulnerable, were caught. They broke, fleeing the relentless arrow storm. The first French assault, heralded by such arrogance, dissolved into a rout. The ground was littered with their fallen. The cost of overconfidence was evident. The field of engagement became a testament to tactical folly and English skill. A cheer erupted from the Anglo-Gascon lines. The first wave, the proudest, had been decisively repelled. The Black Prince watched, his plan executing perfectly. The unyielding ground had claimed its first French casualties. For the main French army, a chilling realization dawned. This would be no easy victory, but a brutal, desperate struggle. The Dauphin Charles, heir to the French throne, prepared his division for a renewed, relentless assault. Disregarding previous failures, his elite dismounted men-at-arms now formed the vanguard of France's renewed offensive. Across the blood-soaked ground, a formidable tide of French steel advanced, seeking to overwhelm the Anglo-Gascon line. Their resolve hardened by royal presence, these warriors were tasked with breaking the enemy's stubborn resistance. This was not a charge of cavalry, but a slow, inexorable grind, designed for maximum attrition and pressure. The renewed French assault crashed into the Anglo-Gascon lines, initiating a brutal, sustained melee of attrition. No longer a swift charge, but a slow, grinding struggle for every inch of contested, blood-soaked ground. The air filled with the clang of metal, the shouts of commanders, and the desperate cries of the dying. The Anglo-Gascons, though weary, braced themselves again, forming an unyielding wall against the French fury. Hours melted into an eternity of close-quarters combat, each side vying for supremacy in a deadly dance. The ground beneath their feet turned into a treacherous mire, soaked with blood and littered with the fallen. Banners dipped and swayed precariously, marking the desperate, fluctuating struggle for the battle's heart. This was a test of sheer endurance and willpower, where individual strength was magnified by collective resolve. Exhaustion gnawed at both armies, but the French pressed on, relentless in their determination to break through. Weapons blurred in a symphony of destruction. The melee raged, a testament to medieval warfare's brutal reality. Against the overwhelming numbers, the Anglo-Gascons displayed incredible tenacity, their lines bending but not breaking. Exhausted but unyielding, they met every French push with fierce defiance, fueled by sheer, desperate will. Each French attack was met with stiff resistance, their momentum blunted by a wall of unwavering resolve. Commanders roared commands over the din, urging their men to stand firm, to hold the precious ground. Every man fought for his life, for his comrades, for the very survival of their beleaguered, isolated army. Despite being outnumbered, their disciplined formation and advantageous terrain continued to confound French assaults. Repeatedly, the French surge faltered, unable to find a decisive breakthrough against the resolute defenders. Frustration began to creep into French ranks. Their sustained efforts yielded only more casualties and stalemates. The sheer tenacity of the Anglo-Gascons seemed supernatural. They refused to yield, defying all expectations. This was a battle of wills, a test of who could endure the longest, who would ultimately break first. The Dauphin's division engaged in a relentless, brutal grind, pushing their men to the absolute limits of endurance. Wave after wave of French attackers hurled themselves against the English and Gascon positions. The sheer scale of attrition was staggering, the ground a charnel house of broken bodies and shattered equipment. Hours passed. The French numerical superiority seemed to count for little against such unyielding resolve. Doubts began to surface among the French commanders. Could they truly break this stubborn, bloody defense? Each failed assault chipped away at French morale, a slow, corrosive process eroding their initial confidence. Despite grievous losses, the Anglo-Gascons held their position, their spirits unbroken, their determination unwavering. As daylight began to fade, the grinding battle showed no signs of conclusion, only endless, brutal stalemate. The constant repulse of their attacks bred confusion, spreading like a contagion through the French ranks. French soldiers, exhausted and demoralized, began to lose cohesion, their disciplined formations starting to fray. The sustained French onslaught faltered, its once formidable momentum now visibly dissipating into disarray. Morale plummeted. Whispers of retreat, of the battle being lost, began to circulate among the weary soldiers. Confusion turned to panic in some sectors, as the futility of their relentless, costly attacks became clear. The Dauphin's valiant but ultimately futile efforts had taken a devastating toll on French fighting spirit. The relentless Anglo-Gascon defense had broken more than just French lines. It shattered their morale. Seeing the battle's grim turn, Philip, Duke of Orleans, made a fateful strategic decision to withdraw. The king's young sons, including the Dauphin, were also discreetly escorted away from the collapsing front. The withdrawal began, a slow, agonizing process, further exposing the remaining, committed French divisions. The retreat of the Dauphin and Orleans left King John and his household exposed, facing an impossible fight. King John II, defiant amidst the carnage, prepared for France's desperate, final, fateful gamble. The unfurling of the oriflamme signified no quarter. Victory or death, the stakes were absolute. These were the loyal few, exhausted but unyielding, ready to follow their sovereign into oblivion. With a roar of defiance, the king called upon the very soul of France for this final, desperate thrust. The fourth assault began, a human wave crashing against the weary, yet steadfast, English defenses. Through a sea of mud and fallen comrades, the French knights pressed on, propelled by kingly honor. Exhausted but unbroken, the English defenders braced. Every arrow, every shield wall held immense weight. Inch by bloody inch, the French clawed their way forward, forcing cracks in the seemingly impenetrable line. His eyes, mirrors of France's last hope, reflected a king's unyielding will against overwhelming odds. The battlefield became a maelstrom of death, a brutal symphony of desperate men fighting for survival. French banners, once symbols of invincibility, now struggled, battered and torn, against relentless pressure. Despite relentless pressure, the English line, a testament to endurance, refused to yield an inch. For every Frenchman fallen, another rose, driven by the desperate spirit of their embattled kingdom. The Poitiers battlefield, a sprawling canvas of chaos and carnage, witnessed history's brutal unfolding. Though brave, the French lines faltered. Fatigue and disorganization began to claim their inevitable toll. The king himself, axe in hand, fought with the fury of a cornered lion, inspiring his last loyal guards. Still, the silent whispers of death, English arrows, found their mark, sowing further despair. Dismounted, the elite French cavalry fought like infantry, battling to pierce the unyielding English formations. Fear and exhaustion etched on every face, yet a flicker of hope, however dim, remained. For a moment, a bloody stalemate. Both armies, utterly spent, teetered on the brink of collapse. But far from the main clash, a silent threat emerged. Anglo-Gascon cavalry, swift and unseen. Sir John Chandos, keen-eyed and cunning, pointed the way. His target, the unsuspecting French rear. With calculated stealth, the horses moved. Each stride brought them closer to their decisive, devastating objective. In the French rear, a false sense of security reigned. They believed themselves safe, untouched by battle. A lone scout, a shadow in the woods, confirmed their vulnerable position. The time was ripe. The intelligence confirmed, Chandos's plan solidified. This bold flanking maneuver would change everything. The order was given, a silent command that would soon unleash chaos. The trap was sprung. Muscles tensed, hooves coiled. The silent prelude to a thunderous charge, hidden from their enemy. Swords drawn, a glint of cold steel. Each rider understood the immense impact of their coming action. A moment of pregnant silence, then the signal. Destiny hung precariously in the balance for France. Then, pandemonium. A sudden thunderous charge from the rear shattered French complacency and order. Disbelief turned to horror as French soldiers turned, facing a terrifying, unexpected assault from behind. Panic, a relentless tide, swept through the French rear. Order disintegrated into utter, uncontrollable chaos. Relentless, the flanking force carved a bloody path. Fleeing soldiers were cut down without mercy. The main French line, already strained, watched in horror as their rear dissolved into utter pandemonium. Despair gripped French hearts. Trapped between relentless foes, a chilling realization of certain defeat. The oriflamme, sacred symbol, now flew over a tide of broken men, its promise of victory fading. King John's Guard, overwhelmed, fought with suicidal bravery against relentless attacks from all sides. The entire French army, once a formidable host, dissolved into a terrified, disorganized, desperate rout. One by one, the proud French banners fell, crushed beneath the weight of overwhelming, irreversible defeat. King John, dismounted and defiant, wielded his battle axe, a lone, unyielding figure in the maelstrom. Surrounded by a sea of English and Gascon foes, the king fought on, a beacon of doomed courage. Finally, overwhelmed by sheer numbers, King John II was disarmed and captured, a devastating blow. The battle ceased. The field, a testament to France's utter collapse, lay silent in defeat's grim embrace. The sun set on Poitiers, casting long shadows over a field of unimaginable carnage. France lay broken. Thousands of French knights and common soldiers, a generation's elite, had perished in the slaughter. For England, the victory was total, yet the cost of such triumph was etched into every survivor's face. Amidst the chaos, King John the Good fought with the courage of a lion, refusing to yield. His youngest son, Philip, stood steadfast, a beacon of loyalty in their family's darkest hour. Overwhelmed and outnumbered, the King of France finally surrendered, his kingdom's fate sealed. The capture of a monarch was an unprecedented prize, a symbol of England's dominance and fortune. The Black Prince, victorious but gracious, received his royal prisoner with honor and genuine respect. From the blood-soaked fields, King John began his arduous journey, a monarch stripped of his crown. In Bordeaux, the reality of his captivity settled, negotiations for his monumental freedom slowly beginning. The ransom demanded was colossal, a sum that would cripple France, shaking its very foundations. A 2-year truce was brokered, a desperate pause in the 100 Years' War to regroup and heal. Then, across the Channel, King John embarked on his journey to London, a king in gilded chains. London greeted its royal captive with fanfare, a spectacle of English triumph and French humiliation. Despite his imprisonment, King John lived a life of relative comfort, awaiting his kingdom's payment. Back in France, a power vacuum festered. The realm, leaderless, spiraled into dangerous chaos. Dauphin Charles, still young, grappled with the immense task of governing a kingdom in despair. The populace, weary of defeat and taxes, rose in revolt, demanding radical change from the elite. The Jacquerie, a furious peasant uprising, unleashed unprecedented violence across the French countryside. French nobility, humiliated by defeat, now faced a terrifying new threat from within their own lands. Adding to the turmoil, roving bands of unemployed soldiers, the free companies, plundered the land mercilessly. France's central authority crumbled, its social fabric torn by war, rebellion, and desperate despair. The future of France hung precariously, a kingdom teetering on the brink, desperately seeking its survival. The thunder of Poitiers faded, leaving a hollow silence across France. A nation bled, shattered by a single catastrophic day. The defeat's long shadow stretched far beyond the battlefield, fundamentally altering the very balance of power in Europe. With a king captured and its nobility decimated, France had little choice but to seek a devastating, humbling peace. King John II remained a royal prisoner in England, a powerful bargaining chip in the hands of his conquerors. The arduous negotiations for a lasting peace began, a diplomatic struggle as fierce as any battle fought on the field. For years, envoys clashed over every clause, every boundary. England's demands were uncompromising, France's position weak. Years of wrangling ensued, a slow, agonizing grind of diplomacy that mirrored the exhaustion of the warring kingdoms. The immense pressure on France to secure their king's freedom and halt the destruction was almost unbearable. Edward III, emboldened by victory, pressed his advantage relentlessly, demanding vast swathes of French land. Finally, 1360, the Treaty of Brétigny was signed, a desperate attempt to staunch the bleeding and end the endless war. Its terms were brutal. England seized vast territories, a new empire carved from the heart of a broken kingdom. The ceded territories dramatically expanded English dominion, securing valuable lands and resources for the crown. Adding insult to injury, an exorbitant ransom for King John was demanded, a staggering sum designed to cripple France. The ransom's cost fell heavily upon the French populace, an unimaginable economic burden for generations to come. Poitiers and Brétigny were not merely military defeats. They were profound humiliations, scarring the French national psyche. For a brief period, the war seemed ended. A fragile, uneasy peace descended, yet beneath, resentment simmered. The humiliation of Poitiers and the severity of Brétigny ignited a fierce French resurgence, a burning desire for retribution. Yet, from the ashes, a new king, Charles V, rose. He would meticulously rebuild France's shattered strength. Under Charles V, France underwent a profound military and administrative renewal, preparing for the inevitable resumption. Hostilities resumed, but with a changed French strategy, no longer seeking pitched battles, but rather slow, steady reconquest. Bit by bit, territory was reclaimed. Decades of patient, strategic warfare slowly turned the tide against England. By 1453, a century after the war began, France stood victorious. The English were almost entirely driven out. Poitiers was a scar, but ultimately, it forged a stronger France. The map of Western Europe was forever redrawn. The Battle of Poitiers, 1356, resonates through history. Its legacy, far from forgotten, shaped the future. More than a clash of arms, Poitiers stands as one of the Hundred Years' War's most decisive engagements. The English longbow, a weapon of devastating efficiency, cemented its tactical supremacy here, rewriting warfare's rules. This was the day traditional mounted chivalry faced its reckoning, a brutal testament to evolving military thought. For France, the capture of their King John II dealt a catastrophic blow to royal authority, shaking the very realm. Conversely, England's prestige soared. Edward the Black Prince emerged a legend, his victory solidifying Plantagenet power. Poitiers forged a nascent English identity, uniting a nation behind its formidable warriors and an audacious king. For France, amidst defeat, a deeper sense of shared destiny began to coalesce, inspiring future resistance. This was a conflict of epic proportions, a testament to human courage, ambition, and the brutal cost of war. Poitiers offers timeless lessons in leadership, showcasing how shrewd decisions can overcome overwhelming odds. Beyond brute force, it revealed the supreme importance of adaptable strategy and understanding battlefield terrain. And above all, it's a profound story of resilience, the indomitable spirit of those who fought and survived. The echoes of Poitiers invite us to delve deeper into history's grand tapestry and its incredible narratives. Join us in uncovering more cinematic history. Like, share, subscribe, and tell us what sagas captivate you.